is 0-for-2 in presidential runs, but a growing Republican chorus is singing Mitt Romney's tune for 2016. Joining me around the table, Lan-Hee Chin. He is a former advisor to Mitt Romney. CNN contributor Marc Lamont, Penny Lee, one-time advisor to Senator Harry Reid, and Republican pollster Kristen Soltis Anderson. Thanks all. Let me start with the poll, because you know how we feel about polls. This was a USA Today poll about Republicans' choice in Iowa. For 2016, okay, just to put you into the future. Romney, 35%, next closest, Huckabee at 9%. Now I'd like to play you something that Mitt Romney, who has, can we all agree, said he's not running, right? Many times. And so here's Mitt Romney on the Hugh Hewitt show this weekend, I think.
I have had the chance of running. I didn't win. Someone else has a better chance than I do. And that's what we believe, and that's why I'm not running. And, you know, circumstances can change, but I'm just not going to let my head go there.
Could you interpret this for us? Speak Romney for us and tell us what that means.
It means Governor Romney's not running. He's not a candidate. He won't be a candidate. I can understand why there's so much interest in Governor Romney. I mean, look, I don't think there's ever been a former presidential candidate who's been so on the money in his assessment of a president's failures. And so that's why the interest is there. But Governor Romney's not running.
And you think he knew, I mean, because he went on to say, well, if they all got together and came to me and said, hey, we've decided we can't do it, you must do it. He said, well, that's a 1 in a million. And so it just seems to me he went to the door.
That's what politicians do. And he said someone else has a better chance of winning. So that opens the door for a month or 2 or 3 months from now to say, you know what, I actually reassessed the situation, and now I have the best chance of winning, and so I'm going to run. I think it's a bad idea, though.
I think it's highly unlikely that he's going to run. And what you're seeing in these polls right now is a lot of folks who are agreeing with Lonnie's assessment that Governor Romney was right on a lot of issues, and now looking back are thinking, wow, look at what's happening around the world as the world is kind of on fire. But in these polls, it's a lot of name identification. People know who Governor Romney is. He was in the national spotlight. A lot of these other folks in the Republican field are lesser known quantities. But as 2016 approaches and voters get to know them more, those polls will change.
I think he's asking for the Ready for Mitt campaign to start. You know, let's see exactly whether or not, because when you do talk to supporters, Lonnie and others know, there really is still an enthusiastic response towards his own candidacy. You even heard Paul Ryan, his running mate, say 3 times a charm. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see whether or not he does, quote unquote, get recruited and there isn't a Ready for Mitt kind of campaign effort.
I think it's an awful idea. I mean, when he's not running, everybody loves Mitt Romney. The challenge is when he's running, will the Republican base say that he's not conservative enough? Will the same concerns about everything from, you know, the unfair concerns about religion and these weird sort of narratives about Mitt Romney not being strong enough, the whole 47%, all that stuff comes back out the moment you throw your hat in the ring. It's best to stay out. He's much more popular.
But Mitt Romney's not the only person that may have to deal with that. Think about the other side of the aisle, Hillary Clinton. Everybody can love her, and then as soon as her hat goes in the ring, I suspect you might see things change for her as well.
And on the issues, Mitt Romney's been absolutely right. Whether you look at Iraq or Russia or the economy or Obamacare, those critiques have been absolutely right. And that's why people are so enthused by the notion of a potential Romney candidacy.
And when was the last time, like in history, that a group of people running for president went to someone else and said, oh, you should... Right?
Well, it's usually the stop, but come on and tell me. You know, usually it's the begging for that question to be answered, whether or not, do you really love me? Please tell me you really love me. I mean, that's usually the context in which you do it. And so, you know, we always say it takes one person to talk you into it and 10,000 to talk you out of it. So, you know, a lot of these people have the preconceived notion and where they want to go. Mitt Romney obviously has tried twice. And it is not, as you can see, even though there was maybe a Sherman-esque moment there, you can tell it is not right now in his heart.
And let me just move you really quickly to Rick Perry. Like, how long can this indictment be pending before it begins to hurt him on the campaign trail? I think, unofficial campaign trail. I think people right now say, look, for the primary audience, this is just more proof that the mainstream media and the Democrats are playing dirty. It works kind of okay right now. When does it start to hurt him?
I think he can ride this wave through a Republican primary, to be quite honest, because it looks like...
Under indictment?
Yes. I think it looks like power-hungry Democrats. I think it looks like an attack on him. It looks like a political prosecution. And I think he can say, I'm being crucified right now. I think he can win on this.
Think about who's actually gotten behind Rick Perry now. You have Jeb Bush, Chris Christie, Bobby Jindal, all of these potential 2016
David
candidates.
Axelrod.
And people on the left, too. Amazing, the amazing coalition of the willing. Saying, you know, this is a clearly political indictment, a ridiculous charge. And I think Governor Perry's played it really well.
Yeah, I mean, and think about what he's being accused of. He's being accused of exercising veto power. He's not being accused of mismanaging campaign funds or doing the sorts of traditional things we think of in terms of political corruption. He was trying to veto funding because of a DA who did some things that, you know, the video sort of says it all.
This is much different than what Chris Christie is facing.
Right.
This is a much different indictment. This is, as you say, from a flawed district attorney whose own office, Travis County office, is known to go after these political indictments. So it's a much different circumstances and one that he probably can ride a lot longer than Chris Christie can.
Let me let it lay there because there may be several months for us to discuss this. We've got to get in a break and get to the election that's only 65 days away. Are there wild cards that could affect the 2014 election?
If Congress repeals Obamacare, insurance companies would go back to charging whatever they want.
It's time to pay attention.
You're going to want to do this to your TV.
I'm going to use my Glock to blow your balls off.
I grew up castrating hogs.
I'll stand up to the big spender.
I just wanted to get you all in the mood for the 2014 elections, right? So just a couple of the ads. I want to also play you some. Ted Cruz gave a speech this weekend, and it was a stem winder, and it was to the party faithful, and it really was aimed at getting out the vote. You all have to bring 9 friends, go to, and he said there are issues here, they're going to be at play. So I want to play you 2 sound bites from him. The first one deals with immigration, the second one with foreign policy, specifically Ukraine.
There's a good chance he's going to try again to illegally grant amnesty to millions more people. Let me be absolutely clear. Doing that is utterly lawless. You look at Russia right now. Sadly, the state of the world is the Russian bear is encountering the Obama kitty cat.
So, 2 issues. First of all, foreign policy, ISIS, Ukraine, and immigration, what the president may or may not do to extend the stay of some that don't have papers to stay here legally. So, what other factors could move this election? Because it seems to me as you watch these state polls, particularly for the Senate, where Republicans would like to take over, they get used to some 40-40 races and some 51-49 races. So big things can sway. What's going to sway this election, or what could sway it?
Because what you're not seeing is this whole wave election like we have seen in the past, where there was kind of this overarching narrative, you know, either anti-Bush or, you know, anti-wherever, that it was waving and sending people in. So you do have these individual issues that are going to resonate with the individual states in unique different ways. So it could be on the foreign policy front. It could be on immigration. Immigration can hurt and help in both ways, especially for Democrats. It can help in Colorado. It can hurt in Arkansas. So there are going to have these things. You're going to have some maybe residual effects from Ferguson and an angerness that the African Americans feeling in their community. Will that drive them out? Will they feel alienated in North Carolina because of the voting rights law? So there's going to be a lot of different issues that are going to affect each candidate in each race in very unique ways.
I think right now, both sides of the aisle have different approaches to whether they want something to change the game at this point. I think for Republicans, sort of keeping the status quo, keeping these races close, I think sort of benefits them because the momentum feels a little bit like it's behind Republicans. Midterms, they tend to be at an advantage. That's why you're seeing a lot of Democrats trying to push this narrative that Republicans are going to impeach the president, that they want to shut down the government. That's why you're hearing all of this rhetoric coming out of the left that's trying to scare people into changing the dynamics so that Democrats can perhaps have a little bit more of a better chance in some of these close
And I think
races.
there's an internal sense that Republicans will once again snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. You know, that they will drop the ball somewhere near October, and I think that's what people are hoping for. North Carolina is actually a good example of just how mixed up this race is. It's not likely, I don't think it's going to be about ISIS. I don't think it's going to be about Ukraine. It could be about the local dysfunction of the state legislature, which favors Hagan, or it could be a referendum on Obama, which favors Tillis, or it could be the third-party libertarian, Sean Hall, who completely blows things out. He only needs a few thousand votes to make a difference here. So I think that's how messy this thing is. Like you said, there's no overarching narrative.
It is interesting, though, because this is really the first election we can think of in a while where there hasn't been a single overarching issue. We've talked talked about this, right? Is it going to be ISIS or ISIL or Ukraine? Obamacare? Is the economy going to continue to create part-time jobs instead of full-time work? Those are all still relevant issues. And then the other thing is really going to be money down the stretch. You know, I know there's concern about getting massively outspent on the Republican side in states like Iowa and Louisiana and North Carolina. How is that going to impact the election? But the one thing I think Republicans do have going for them this cycle is they've got great candidates. And that's something they may not have had in the past. And I think they feel really good about the group of candidates they have, particularly in states like North Carolina. And now you've got Colorado, New Hampshire, Oregon, Minnesota may be coming online. This could be a very interesting and broad election.
Well, and I would say that Democrats also have some great candidates, especially in places like Kentucky and Georgia, places that aren't normally seen as Democratic strongholds or places in which Democrats can excel at. So you have two women candidates down there that might take out the minority leader and others. So you do have this really interesting dynamic that is playing on. But
it's beginning to feel unsettled.
Yeah.
There was a while I was, oh my gosh, you know, the whole place is going to completely change. And now around to, well, wait a second, this could happen and that could happen. Let me ask you about what apparently is an internal White House debate about whether the president should do an executive order that will allow some folks, some undocumented folks here in the U.S. to stay, give them the papers and to stay. And there's some idea that maybe he should do this after the election. You alluded to that. What are they thinking over there? Once you say you're going to do it, does it matter when you do it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, even obviously just the conversation, this conversation itself creates problems. But if you do it right now, it just builds on this pre-existing narrative that the president is completely out of touch with the American people. He's going rogue. He's violating the Constitution. All these things that are being said, and I think it kills people in places like North Carolina where we're very much attached to President Obama, or in Kentucky where Alison Lundgren Grimes can't take any more hits in order to win a very tight election. This is going to be tough. I think you wait until after you do it, you take the hit afterward.
Yeah, the politics of immigration depend entirely on the time horizon you're looking at. If you're looking at short term, if you're looking at 2014, I think the politics there favor Republicans, particularly if the president comes out and says, I think I'd like to decide how I want to enforce the immigration laws and allow millions of undocumented folks to stay. And I think that long term is where Democrats may have the advantage on the issue.
But look at why we're here. I mean, we had a Congress that couldn't even do anything, especially with the border crisis that we were facing with the influx of children that were coming in from South American countries. All he was asking to do is provide the funding so that he could actually return those.
All the more reason to say, really, we need to have a Republican Senate.
Well, but I think the Republicans just want this issue. I think more than anything, they don't want it to solve. They don't want to come up with a solution in and of themselves, and they're almost daring the president to act so then they can make this even more a campaign issue.
Penny, I have to disagree with you. I do think the biggest problem with an executive action on immigration is that it freezes a real solution in the problems. From a policy perspective, it's a horrible idea because you've got some moderate Republicans who might be willing to come over and help the president and work with him.
He asked, and he was hoping that the Congress would have
Well, but that's the argument they're going to have on the campaign trail, clearly, right?
I mean, he would rather have Congress act.
Well, I think the issue is this. If the Republicans take the Senate and have the House in 2015, there is an opportunity for Republicans to send to the president their immigration solution.
Right, but it's also, they're going to need to show something for it if they take control of Capitol Hill. I got to leave it there. Lan Chin, Penny Lee, Kristen Soltis Anderson, Marc Lamont Hill, thank you guys so much. We'll be right back.